Have you ever felt like you needed a big, dramatic sign from God to believe something or to make a big decision? It's a very human thing to want concrete proof, to want the heavens to open up and give us a clear signal. In today's passage, we see that even the religious leaders of Jesus' time were looking for exactly that. They came to Jesus, not with open hearts, but with a challenge, a demand for a miraculous sign to prove who he was. Let's see how Jesus responds to this and what it teaches us about faith, discernment, and the signs that truly matter. Let's dive into Matthew chapter 16, starting at verse 1 from the New Living Translation. One day the Pharisees and Sadducees came to test Jesus, demanding that he show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. He replied, "You know the saying, red sky at night means fair weather tomorrow. Red sky in the morning means foul weather all day. You know how to interpret the weather signs in the sky, but you don't know how to interpret the signs of the times. Only an evil, adulterous generation would demand a miraculous sign, but the only sign I will give them is the sign of the prophet Jonah." Then Jesus left them and went away. Later, after they crossed to the other side of the lake, the disciples discovered they had forgotten to bring any bread. "Watch out," Jesus warned them, "beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." At this they began to argue with each other because they hadn't brought any bread. Jesus knew what they were saying, so he said, "You have so little faith. Why are you arguing with each other about having no bread? Don't you understand even yet? Don't you remember the 5,000 I fed with 5 loaves, and the baskets of leftovers you picked up? Or the 4,000 I fed with 7 loaves, and the large baskets of leftovers you picked up? Why can't you understand that I'm not talking about bread? So again I say, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Then at last they understood that he wasn't speaking about the yeast in bread, but about the deceptive teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. This is such a powerful and layered passage. First, you have the religious leaders, the Pharisees and Sadducees. These were the experts in Scripture, the ones who should have recognized the Messiah. Yet they come to Jesus demanding a sign, even after he had already healed the sick, cast out demons, and fed thousands. Their problem wasn't a lack of evidence. It was a hardness of heart. They were spiritually blind. Jesus calls them out, saying they can read the sky but can't read the signs of the times. The most significant event in history was happening right in front of them, and they were missing it. Jesus mentions the sign of Jonah, which is a prophecy of his own death and resurrection. Just as Jonah was in the belly of the great fish for 3 days and 3 nights, Jesus would be in the grave for 3 days before rising again. This would be the ultimate sign, but it's a sign that requires faith to accept, not just sight. Then the scene shifts to the disciples in the boat. Jesus gives them a cryptic warning, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And what do? They immediately start worrying about lunch. It's almost comical. They completely miss the spiritual point and focus on the physical. They had just witnessed Jesus feed thousands with a few loaves of bread, not once, but twice. Yet their first thought is about their lack of bread. Jesus has too gently rebuked them, reminding them of his power and provision. He's trying to get them to think on a higher level. The yeast he's talking about isn't for baking. Yeast is something that, even in a small amount, spreads and influences the entire batch of dough. The yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees was their teaching. A teaching filled with hypocrisy, legalism, and a demand for signs that fueled unbelief. It was a corrupting influence that could puff people up with pride but leave them spiritually empty. This passage is a challenge to us today. Are we looking for spectacular signs while ignoring the clear evidence of God's work all around us? And are we so focused on our daily physical worries that we miss the deeper spiritual truths God is trying to teach us? Let's ask God to give us eyes to see the signs of the times and hearts that are sensitive to his voice, so we can avoid the corrupting yeast of false teaching and unbelief. Thanks for joining me today. If this message resonated with you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. I'll see you in the next video. I love reading your comments, so let me know if you love Jesus. I will pray for you, everyone. Search for Jesus at HaroldSwaney for the complete library of my Bible study videos. Thank you and God bless.